welcome back to The Yuppies Know Best. Today's show will discuss rhetoric in the early 20th century surrounding the jungle by Upton Sinclair. With us are Professor Dr. Susan Smith. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Benjamin Williamson Higgins III. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And please, call me Benjamin Williamson Higgins, PhD.
Sure, Benjamin, PhD. And Mr. Emerald Jimenez Gonzalez Morales Martinez Juarez
Martinez Gonzalez Rodriguez Martinez.
Okay.
Please, just call me Hank.
Thanks, Hank. Professor Smith, your research has to do with the logos involved in the Wiley Act. How would you summarize your arguments?
Well, it's quite logical to assume that logos or logic is a use of rational reasoning to persuade your audience from your argument.
That's very interesting. And how is logos implemented in the Wiley Act?
Well, since meat sat in unsanitary conditioning, one can assume that it's not logical to eat bad meat, and therefore it led to the passing of the Wiley Act.
It's pretty nasty. Next, we have Professor Benjamin.
Benjamin Higgins, PhD.
Sure, Professor Benjamin, PhD. You focus on the credibility of Upton Sinclair, Charles P. Neal, and James Bronson Reynolds. How would you summarize your research?
Well, I wouldn't know about it since I did in fact study it at Oxford University. But that's besides the fact, even though it is a fairly impressive one. In summary, what the ethos is credibility. And Upton Sinclair, while he did spend an impressive amount of time studying everything that went on in the jungle, he didn't have enough ethos that would lead to the passing of the Wiley Act. So, President Roosevelt wanted to give credibility to this act, so he sent out two of his own, Niels and Reynolds, to study what actually did happen at these Chicago stockyards.
That's very interesting. And lastly, we have Professor Hank. Hank, your research has to do with the emotional aspect of the jungle. How would you go about to summarize your findings?
Well, we rhetoricians like to use a bunch of fancy words like logos or ethos. But for me, I guess the one you could say that applies to my research is pathos. And pathos is basically just using emotions to elicit a certain response from your audience. And so what Upton Sinclair did when he wrote The Jungle, he wanted the American public to think of the absolutely horrid conditions in the meatpacking industry.
You know, that's very interesting. Can you please go on?
But I guess you could say he backfired, because in addition to including scenes of child labor, exploitation, and the horrible wages they received for those extremely long hours they worked, he included all these disgusting scenes about people losing fingers and rats and feces and just, it outraged the American public. I'm starting to get a little sick, just thinking about it.
Oh, so that passed the Wiley Act?
Yes, but for the wrong reasons. All the Wiley Act did was take care of the conditions in which the food was made, not the workers.
So, which rhetorical strategy do you think was the most effective?
You mean of all three of us?
Well, yeah, between the three of you, which rhetorical method do you feel is the most important?
Ethos. Well, I graduated from Oxford, so I think I would be the expert on this. Okay, guys?
Well, I differ. Logo is the underlying logic to everyday's life. Without logos, there would be no ethos.
But what about the children?
Well, what I think we're trying to say, guys, even though ethos is important, pathos and logos also play a role in it. And depending on the situation, it could be either one. So every situation has a different approach.
Well, that was a great conclusion. Thank you so much for joining us. As you all can see, Yuppies do know best. Next is Jonathan.